Hi, it's Kara again. It is still Autism Acceptance Month, and I'm finding myself with a lot to say, so I appreciate people listening and tuning in. I realized that the first video I did, although fair, was a little not fair, and as someone on the spectrum, I have a bit of an obsession with fair and balance and so this isn't necessarily a formal apology. It's just I wanted to look at the reasons why there are a whole lot of reasons why someone wouldn't have a formal autism diagnosis, and it shouldn't rule them out of being able to get access to things like the National Park Pass, which, if you have a disability, you are able to use the national parks at like half price for camping and that sort of thing. The issue at hand here is the fact that testing for autism is incredibly expensive. It's also done in a really, really variable way. You don't really know what you're getting or what you're paying for. When I used to work with folks individually on the spectrum, I would refer out usually to individual diagnosticians, but also there are certain testing centers that would take Medicaid, for instance. So before I would refer out, I would always tour the testing center, talk to the director if I could, get an idea of how they run their practices. Locally here in Asheville, I think I've toured somewhere between 3 and 6. So some things to know is your best choice if you want if you need to get evaluated and you want to do what I projected as the right thing in the last video of having it be formal, you're going to be treated differently and assessed differently, likely based on payer source and education of the person doing the assessment, as well as IQ, unfortunately. So testing for autism can cost anywhere from $1,500 to $4,000. There are some free programs. I myself was on a wait list for Teach, which I brought up a couple times. They are kind of the leading, in my opinion, experts on autism in the U.S. They have centers around North Carolina. They're very good about getting to children quicker when it comes to diagnosing. But for adults, there's usually, I think I had an 18-month wait. That's a long time. When I got my diagnosis through a psychiatrist so that I didn't have to wait the whole 18 months. It only took a year to get in because I was just getting in to see a therapist who was amazing and life-changing, and will always be grateful for her. But these are the traps that our for-profit healthcare system has exacerbated in the last 2 or 3 years, as we've gone to policies that would have been considered catastrophic 10 years ago that are now just insurance, where, for instance, until you've spent $8,000 out of pocket, your insurance doesn't cover anything. I don't know anyone my age or anyone with a child that has $8,000 to spend on autism testing, or $3,000 to spend on autism testing. It's not fair. It's how the system's set up. For instance, children oftentimes who have Medicaid, if they're tested at a testing center, will get a truncated version of the assessment. So instead of a 3-hour assessment, they get the hour-long assessment. Or they may get evaluated by the grad student, who's a grad student, and they're technically learning, but they're not the person who's been assessing for autism for 30 years, that, like the person I worked with at Teach, that I'm pretty sure could look at someone in a Walmart and know if they had autism. Thank you, Ann McGuire. It's just, I made an oversimplification in my last video, and I wanted to go back and show some compassion over the fact that getting diagnosed is not reasonable for everyone. The educational diagnoses are, again, through the school, so they should be free. But if the child is performing at grade level, no matter how much they're, that's not true, if they're being violent, but the school can say no. Or they can get them evaluated, get an educational diagnosis, and you don't get any extra help, which is the whole point. Like, if you're putting your child through, and yourself, and I'm mostly talking about children with this, but through hours of testing, through questioning, through a new environment, through new people, through dealing with your insurance company to get pre-approved, because most mental health things need pre-approval. Like, this is a lot of extra stress on a family system that's already under a whole lot of stress. And I wanted to express some compassion for that. I don't have an answer. I don't know a way to make it better. I wish I did. When I worked for the Medicaid, North Carolina Medicaid Innovations Waiver, we had kids that literally waited 8 to 10 years before they got services. These are children with functional IQs in the 60s. They need help. They need help. Their parents need help. They're exhausted. They have diagnoses and they're still not getting help. I know I'm a little all over the place. I apologize for that. I have had a very difficult time sleeping last night, as can be the way with autism, and I'm a little scattered, but the main upshot is I do understand that for some people, self-diagnosis may be the best they can do, because we don't have resources for you. And I hate that. And that's why I'm doing this, is I want to be a resource. And if there's a question I can answer, I've had a few people reach out and ask about applying for disability. Big thing. If you do have a child that has what you think to be autism or another disability, please, please, please try to get them disability and or Medicaid before they are 21. After they are 21, it is so much more complicated and so much less likely that they will be able to get that service. Because the idea is, oh, you made it 21 years without needing disability, so you don't need it now. Also, even with a diagnosis, as an adult being, I think, 18 and up in this sense, people with level 1 diagnosis, the kind that I have, Asperger's, the only service that the government will pay for, you don't qualify for disability, you don't qualify for any medical help, you do qualify for supported employment. I worked with our local supported employment agency here in Buncombe County for about 18 months. I will say it was absolutely miserable for my mental health. For someone with, it puts people with master's degrees folding clothes at Target, which is terrible for their anxiety, their sense of self-worth, their sense of shame and guilt, and doesn't do a lot to help pay off their student debt. It's not to say that would be everyone's experience. There are a lot of different supported employment offices, so I'm not saying that it couldn't potentially help someone, but the idea that a diagnosis is going to lead to an easier life or having more supports that you need, it's unfortunately in North Carolina not true, and that's a whole bigger political issue. We spent 20 years not taking federal subsidies for mental health in this state. I won't get into that because I'll never shut up. But big long video, long and short is, although I really would appreciate some thought being given into these TikTok quick fix posts, it doesn't mean that if you don't have a formal diagnosis and you don't have a way of getting one, you're not suffering and that you may not be on the spectrum. And I hope that we learn to do better in this country, and the only way we can learn to do better is by people talking and speaking out. Thanks for your time.